I don't know.
Yeah, we'll just figure that out.
Because I think you had
Flavor.
I think you had questions.
Better
about
be
that.
like 5307 though, or I'm gonna be ticked. We've had this conversation multiple
I
times.
know you did,
Yeah,
you did.
so. Morning, Paul.
Guys,
Morning.
how you doing, Nick?
I'm hanging in there. How about you?
Doing just fine, thanks.
Excellent.
As well as could be expected.
Yeah. I just heard last night I was here for negotiations, that one of our commissioners is departing, Michael Scanlon.
Really?
Do you know that?
No, that's surprising.
Yeah, I was bummed
Did he
out.
move? Has he moved or what?
He's moving to Washington or to Virginia.
No kidding.
Yeah, so we're gonna have one less committee member pretty soon.
That's unfortunate.
I know, I was telling him that, I was like, can't you just keep a PO box here and do it virtually? But, so.
Well, you
South Run
don't-
is gonna have to find a new member soon.
You don't have to live in the community that you represent, you know.
There we go, so we should
I
tell
don't
Michael
know
that.
if we've
Keep
ever had
working.
anybody on the board from a different state. That would be interesting.
He's been a good commissioner, I think we should make an
Yeah.
exception if we need to. Alright. Someone just joined? That must be Clayton. I don't know, Paul, it's 8 o'clock.
Yeah, no, Susan said she wasn't going to be here, but that she's the only
Yeah.
person I heard from.
Oh, here, oh, that's Connor.
Buddy, I'm gonna be off camera because I'm gonna be dropping the kid off to school for the first part of the meeting, but I'll be in position for the executive session.
Alright, well, we gotta get a quorum first.
Well, this is frustrating.
Um. This time I actually will, I'll poll the committee members after this meeting and if we have to move. Oh. I don't know, Ghana cut, okay.
But nobody's complained about the meeting date or time.
No, I mean, I think it's difficult for Chapin, to make it, he usually shows up, around 10-15 minutes late, I think, just because of big, conflict he has, but. Yeah. I know Susan said she'll be back to normal pretty soon with her conflict, so that'll hopefully resolve itself.
Yeah, hopefully next meeting.
Hi guys, this is me. I'm trying to figure out. This is kind of cover. My computer crashed, so I'm on my wife's. I'm just trying to figure out how to get on camera.
No problem. I was wondering who that was, Michael was. So that's great. And Austin is joining now too. So I think that's 3 members, Paul. So
Yeah, that'll be great.
I
I'm gonna be sorry guys. I can't figure out. Well, here we go. Maybe this will work. Nope, I can't seem to figure out the camera angle, so it'll just be oral.
Oh, there, well, there's Austin.
Morning, Austin.
Morning, Paul.
Mike, we'll assume your black screen is a protest.
Yes, yes, this is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I know, I just can't, her, somehow Zoom shows up differently on her computer and I can't figure out how to do the video. So I guess it'll have to have me in the dark, like usual.
Sounds like you might need some help there, Michael.
I do.
Actually, I think it's just that Michael's still in his pajamas and he doesn't want anyone to see. That's actually my situation, so.
We do have a quorum, so I'd like to call the meeting to order at 8:03. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Hearing none, are there any members of the public who would like to comment? No members of the public? Then let's move right along to the next item, which is approval of the committee meetings for April 10. The motion would be in order to approve those as circulated.
I so move.
Thank you, Michael.
Second.
Thank you, Austin. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The abstentions? The minutes pass. Nick, we're down to you for your report.
Yeah, so I'm gonna keep my report fairly brief just because we've got a couple other items on the agenda that will take up probably a good chunk of time. Typically, we would have done a quarterly, full in-depth PowerPoint presentation because in your packet, you've got March financials. So really the end of Q3, right? And April expenses. However, because we had some other things we had to discuss at this meeting, we're gonna punt that and we'll plan to do, an in-depth, drill down into the financials for next month. So look forward to that. But for the meantime, you do have financials in there as well as, my report, and I'll cover, a high level today of where we stand. Just some department updates. Thankfully, especially for my staff, we are going to be joined next week by our new senior staff accountant. So we've made a hire there. So really looking forward to getting that person up and running. The employee's name is Rich Carmo. He comes with a background, obviously in accounting and finance, but his previous role was as an assistant controller for Unilever. So a lot of experience there. Obviously, he doesn't have any experience in the nonprofit governmental side, but neither did I. So it shows you can learn it, and we're looking forward to having him join. And so I'm sure you folks will all get to meet him next month. He'll be attending finance committee. The line of credit got approved by the board last month, and we're still working with the lawyers in the bank just to get the final paperwork done. But I will need, I believe, the treasurer. So I believe that is still you, Paul.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so it'll either be you or Amy, or maybe both to sign the paperwork. But I think that's a good step forward, especially with the rural transfer now looking more likely than not. We're going to be it'll be a good thing to have that financing lined up for us. The state grant award, I won't speak too much to that because Tim's going to cover that shortly. But we are pretty close to finalizing both awards. I will say rural, especially this year, is looking very tough. So, but like I said, Tim will dive more deeper into that shortly. We'll be sending out invoices for the FY26 urban assessments. So, local town and city managers will be getting those shortly. My understanding is the special assessment did not pass, so we will not be including that, even though it was on the letters that we sent out. we'll make clear in the invoices that, you know, we're not gonna be requesting any funds for any of those line items that were requested. Some other news, as you heard, I think at the leadership committee this month, we're in corrective action with Medicaid. And so they are going to be bringing in a third party to, you know, look at our processes, our compliance, our finances, a lot of things. So we're gonna be working through that process with them, and you know, we look forward to seeing what the results are for that. And then we did have to cancel retirement committee this quarter due to some scheduling conflicts, so we'll be working on getting that back on the agenda. We're probably gonna take this quarter off, but we'll restart that next quarter. Regarding the financials, we're in a pretty good place as of, you know, March. You know, the total operating surplus for GMT as a whole is about 169,000. We've got a positive change in net assets of 152. On the urban side, still showing a slight deficit of about 43,000. You know, we really think that is likely just some timing issues with accruals and whatnot. You know, just to give you an understanding, it's, you know, 0.3% of operating of total revenue. So if we can get within 0.3%, you know, I think we're doing pretty good. On the rural side, you know, there is a decent surplus, about $211,000. Just to give you an understanding where we stand on the rural side, because this year is going to be a little bit tighter than most in terms of grant funding. You know, we are running short on 5311 funding as we enter the remainder of the year, so we're working very closely with VTrans on that. They are going to be able to provide a little bit of extra funding, but we are also going to be putting some local funds in as well. And you know, we did that in March, and we actually saw the deficit or the operating surplus fall by about 25%. So it fell by about $70,000 over February. And so we're going to continue to do that to get through the end of the year. And you know, the goal is really just to break even, right? You know, so we don't want to show a deficit, but you know, if we have some surpluses where we can plug that local money in to make our grant funding last for the remainder of the year, we're going to do that. So we're going to continue monitoring that, but it might whipsaw a little bit. I would expect that operating surplus that we're seeing of about 200,000 to continue to fall through Q4. So I won't dive too much into the rest of the financials. I will say, if you look to April for expenses, you know, we're in a pretty good spot, I would say. So we're at 81% of total expenses for, sorry, I'm gonna let some folks in here. So we're at 81% of budget for both urban and rural. The benchmark is 83, so we're actually under budget in total expenses. There are certainly some lines that, you know, we're gonna work on next year in terms of them not being in line with the budget, but overall, I would say I'm pretty happy with where we stand currently. On the urban side, in terms of, you know, the big benchmark of our grant spending, which is really 5307, which is our largest grant, we are about, I think, underspending that by about 4 or 5 percentage points. And that's actually with updated assumptions taking into account some service reductions. So I think that we might actually be going into FY26 hopefully with a little bit of extra grant balance than what we had expected. I don't think it's going to be significant by any means, but it might be a couple $100,000, and you know, that's not nothing. So we'll continue to monitor. We're getting towards the end of the year, which is really helpful. And you know, I'm working on the 26 budget adjustment, which is really going to drive our, you know, future projections. You know, the last big thing to drop really is the CBA. That's the big outstanding kind of item right now, in terms of, figuring out what our future challenges look like on a financial basis, so. That's all I have, we'll do a much bigger dive deeper into the numbers or into the financials next month, but that's kind of a high level of where we stand as of March.
Questions for Nick? Nick, I'm just curious, we mentioned, every time we have a finance report that some things are running over budget, and we're gonna correct that, and when we make our budget for next year. And I think, the opposite of that approach is that we don't spend as much as we have been spending and keep our line items in order. So I don't know if that's a possibility, or are these things that we have to spend, or are these things that are not quite being controlled?
Yeah, I think we need to probably do a better job at that. Yeah, I think we need to have an internal conversation on how we control spending a little bit more. It's hard, to be honest with you, Paul. Because I wouldn't say that the things that are being bought are not necessarily needed. They most likely are, but yeah, it's tough when you've got 200 people and a decent share of them have purchasing authority to keep things in line, but I do the best I can to make sure I let folks know when they're getting close to their budget items. I would say the maintenance department does a really good job of managing that, but we have some other areas where I think we need to do a little bit better, and part of that is I need to get more time to make sure I'm sending folks out more I need to get folks reporting on a quicker basis. It's hard because we're always, a month behind in terms of our reporting of expenses and whatnot. But hopefully with the rural side going away, we're gonna be able to get financials completed a lot quicker than we have in the past.
And something I wanted to throw in there, Paul, earlier in the week, when we were discussing my evaluation, there was, some indications that I needed to get engaged a little bit more on the financial matters. And so this is certainly an area that I'm looking at when it comes to spending controls. So I will be assisting Nick with this.
Yeah, thank you, Clay. Maybe this is something that could be an agenda item in the next couple of months or so, and just review what the purchasing policy is and how that operates. See what the controls are on our purchasing. That would be of interest to the finance committee, I think.
Yeah, and Paul, I would say, we have a very good purchasing policy, but it really just covers, procurement rules, like, what is the process you have to go through to spend, X amount of dollars. We don't necessarily have a process of like, well, when you hit your budget, we shut you off, because it's not realistic to do that for certain areas, right? Like if the bus needs a part, it doesn't matter if it's gonna put us over budget, we gotta buy the part to get the bus fixed, but other areas that are more discretionary, like I would say marketing, and maybe planning, but planning usually has its own funding, so it's not necessarily a budget problem because usually the funds are available. But there are some areas that are discretionary that I think we need to control a little bit better. And I would definitely we'll be working closely with Clayton on that.
Thank you. Any comments from the committee members? All right, let's dig into the state grant application.
You need me to pull this up,
I
Tim?
do.
Okay,
So if you wanna pull up the urban one first, that'd be great.
so you sent it to me in my email?
Yeah, I did. It says finance committee presentation, one you've already looked at.
Oh, I have, okay.
Yeah,
I see it, yeah.
yeah, that one. Scroll down, you should be able to pull the.
So you want the urban?
Yeah, pull the urban one up
Okay.
first.
Okay.
I think that's probably big enough for them to see, or you can blow it up. if
Yeah,
you need
let
to.
me see if I can share my screen here. Alright, folks, we're gonna pull up the urban grant agreement here. Which one was it? Was it this one?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
so I think you got it.
alright. Alright, Tim, this is gonna be hard for you to,
I got it on my
you
screen.
got it on your screen.
I do, as long as they can see it.
Yeah, let me me try to make things better here for everyone. Here comes Chapin.
You should be able to blow it up. There you go. Oops, that's a little bit too much.
Can everyone see this?
Yes,
Okay, great.
All right, so I was asked to present on the an award comparison from what we received in FY 25 compared to FY 26. The first line item on the urban grant agreement is the state operating. You know, we actually received, if you don't take into consideration the 630,000 of one-time funds that we received in FY 25, which we received from the legislator to support half a year to maintain fare free. If you don't take that into consideration, we actually got a $200,000 increase on that line item. The next one on the list is state capital matching funds. That's to support ongoing capital projects in FY 26. The next item is V-Trans 5311 flex funding to 5307, which is our direct federal money that we receive from V-Trans every year that I manage and draw down through the Transit Award Management System for eligible expenses. We were level funded in preventive maintenance. CMAQ federal funding, we actually got an increase of 50,000. In addition, no, it's okay.
I just muted it.
In addition to that, every year we get a transfer from 5307, from 5311 to 5307 for operating assistance. Those funds are at 50/50. V-Trans was actually able to give us 700,000 in FY 26, and those funds are at 80/20, which reduces our local match burden to 20% instead of 50%, which is helpful. The next item here is mobility management. And in that case, you know, they reduced our award, but there is some context there in the notes. We received, we applied for a competitive MTI grant application. And the amount that we received is 164,000. About 80 to 100,000 of that we will be using for mobility management activities. So that partly reflects the reason for the decrease there. The other part of it is that we were underspending our mobility management in FY 25. So they look at how we're trending with our expenses, and that's obviously a consideration for what we receive in funding. The state match just is a correlation to the federal, which is the 10% matching requirement. Is there any questions on the urban one? It's pretty straightforward.
All right, let's jump to the rural then.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna pull up the rural real quick. Just give me a minute.
Yeah.
There.
Yep, that's the one.
And this one is much more complicated.
It is. Yeah, you got it.
Sure. Okay.
So I'll start with the 5311 funding section. You know, we did receive a decreased award for FY 26 overall. You know, V-Trans has indicated to us that there might be considerations for adjustments at mid-year based on how our expenses are trending. But you know, no guarantees. V-Trans has asked us to, you know, assist with our rural fund balance, and Nick is aware of that. I think he already mentioned that we've been using some of that in FY 25 to to kind of stay on track with our budget. Can you scroll down
Oh,
Nick, a
sorry.
little bit? Yeah,
Bad. There you go. Which section we're down here?
we're down in the second section, which is the, you know, the CMAC section. There's some context there. We did receive a smaller award and for the MyRide and the Montpelier Hospital Hill. Part of the context there is we never did the very MyRide, and that was part of the funding that we received. Nick actually looked at the numbers and how we were trending in FY 25. We actually both looked at it together. And he made the request to V-Trans for that amount based on how we were trending with expenditures. In addition to the fact that, you know, we're changing the service delivery, reintroducing the Montpelier Hospital Hill. And then the MyRide will be significantly reduced to just the Montpelier area. So there was a reduction in what we estimated for the revenue hours associated with that when that change happens. The next item on here is, you know, state match. We didn't receive any state matching funds, but there's also some context there as well. Those MTI grants were 3-year pilots, and that was statewide for microtransit. For all the 5311 transit providers. So that money's run out, but, you know, I spoke with Dan, and Dan, was very nice to offer us to carry over, any unspent funds from FY 25. And we are gonna have about $50,000 in carryover funds, which will help lighten the blow there, because we'll use those funds to match in FY 26 for those CMAC services. Stowe expansion and US 2 commuter, and there's a reduction there. That's something that we were aware of, and we were requested by V-Trans to, you know, tighten our belt and reduce our request on that line. Next section. You know, RTAP, I think funding is very tight at V-Trans and on that, and, you know, GMT definitely gets a larger award than some of the other transit providers when it comes to RTAP. Planning, fairly flat, an additional 5,000 there. Mobility management on the rural side, once again, you know, that MTI grant's gonna support mobility management efforts on both the rural and the urban side. That's partly the reason for the decrease. Plus, we were also trying to underspend in FY 25 on rural mobility management. The next item is recovery and job access. That decreases solely based on the fact that we're underspending about 5,000 federal in FY 25. And those are some of the things they look at closely when they're determining the award amounts. So Mobility for All, this is Community Rides of Vermont, which is a sub-recipient. So they provide Mobility for All transportation services, and we serve as the pass-through entity for those funds. So that 300,000 really, it doesn't have a huge impact on us, other than the fact that any leftover funds in that line item is the same flavor as our O&D funding. So we're able to, V-Trans has allowed us in the past, we have overages with O&D expenditures within the fiscal year. They've allowed us to use any of those remaining funds that Community Rides doesn't spend. Nick and I have looked at this closely at how they're trending, and we might have about, you know, 20,000 or so remaining in FY 25 that we can infuse in Chittenden County. That's trying to overspend in this fiscal year, but, you know, and obviously in FY 26, we're not gonna have those slush funds, as you might call them, available to us. O&D, you know, this is gonna be tough. Probably the toughest item on this list. You know, Nick and I have already been working with our O&D partners. Just putting the word out that, You know, we're looking for an increased, especially on the rural side. Our rural O and D partners, we're looking for an increased cash match from them. Nick has been applying a lot of in-kind to support, the local match requirement for these local O and D partners. We're not gonna be able to do that as much in FY '26, because when you apply in kind, it accelerates the drawdown of the federal monies. We've actually set a target of 15% cash match from these partners. We've already heard back from at least one that says we just don't have it in our budget. So Nick and I are gonna make some hard decisions in the next week before we send out the local partner agreements that define what that cash match commitment's gonna be from the O and D partners. I know this is a lot. You know, the final number at the bottom is reflective of the decrease. I don't really feel like that 300,000 has a huge impact on us, other than the fact we were able to use some of those unspent funds in previous years to support our O and D program.
I'm just gonna say a couple of things, Tim. if
Yeah.
That's all right. So yeah, as Tim said, the 300,000 that was supposed to go to CRVT, that's not really a budget impact to us. And to be quite honest, O and D almost isn't totally a budget impact to us either, because essentially it's a program where we stop operating it when we run out of money. I just wanna make sure, did we lose everyone?
Did we lose everybody?
I don't know.
Chapin just left.
Oh, okay.
Still
I was
here.
like, I just heard people leaving, so it's like, shoot, I hope we're not this room can be weird sometimes.
I'm still here.
Okay, great. So anyways, I'm gonna just stop sharing. So the rural side is gonna be really tough this year. Because as you saw, we were experiencing a pretty dramatic drop in funding. The major impacts are the reduction in 5311 funding that we're receiving, as well as the reduction in the state match for MyRide, as well as some federal reduction in the money for MyRide. MyRide is really, I would say, the larger impact of the two. But we're gonna be likely seeing $900,000 to $1 million deficit in rural. Now, you know, V-Trans wants us to use our fund balance and we're gonna have to. So that's what we're gonna do. You know, I think hopefully there will be some additional funding in the mid-year to kind of offset some of that. Because it is a third of really our fund balance on the rural side that we'll be spending in 1 year. But we'll monitor it very closely and we'll go from there, so.
Questions for Tim or Nick? Thank you for that, Tim.
You're welcome. I think Matt was gonna present on the Capitol.
Oh, is Matt here? Okay, I know he was having some trouble getting into.
Was he?
The Zoom.
Yep, I'm here. I will share my screen. And as I'm doing that, I will note from the start that the caveat with the capital awards from the start were that these were initial awards from V-Trans based on where things stood prior to closing out the prior fiscal year. Which has a big impact on the availability of state and federal funds going into FY '26. So, can everyone see my very messy Excel spreadsheet here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you zoom in, Matt?
Yeah, can you blow it up?
Yeah. That should get us the
Yeah.
high point. So you'll see a lot of red here, but like I said, we're not done discussing with V-Trans what the capital program is going to look like in FY '26. But primarily what we have in here is our electrification projects. We have our 6 electric buses, our infrastructure, which we do still need to discuss the amount with V-Trans, as well as what we'll be carrying over into the new fiscal year for the balance of the fire suppression system project, as well as the building management system procurement that we'll be undertaking for the ventilation tie-in that's required by the fire marshal. So in addition to that, we have funding for my other screen. I don't have the right thing here. We have funding for 4 replacement SSTA cutaways, as well as 2 unmodified vans for SSTA. Lower than our request, but I believe one of the other caveats that V-Trans said from the start was that a lot of the vehicle capital will be included in the upcoming 5339 funding opportunity, which has been announced and is applications are due July 14th. So we'll be working with V-Trans to ensure that our vehicle needs are captured in that application. So hopefully we'll be able to get an influx of vehicle capital to increase that figure, as SSTA has quite a few high mileage cutaways in need of replacement. The initial capital award that we got prior to the most recent version had 100,000 in the new accounting system software. Nick has graciously offered up 75,000 of that to be used for the spare parts line, as we did not have any capital awards for the spare parts of the facility PM, leaving 25,000 for the hiring of a consultant to assist with that. And then, as Tim noted, we got $2,600 in state match for capital to match our direct federal grants. That was quite a bit lower than what we had requested. We did request 36,229 to help us with ADA ITS improvements, primarily in the ADA compliance area, to match the livability grant so we can spend that down, as well as 5,000 for passenger amenities. So that'll be something that we continue to discuss with V-Trans, what the state match or state funds into 26 looks like after the prior year gets closed. Believe that covers everything for urban. Are there any questions before I move on to rural?
Let's go back to that software procurement. What's a consultant gonna do?
So Paul, my hope is so I'm going to a conference at the end of this month, and they always have all the consultants and all the accounting softwares there. You know, accounting software can either be a huge help or a gigantic nightmare. And so I think it would be helpful to have a third party, come in, look at what our processes are and our needs, and help us develop the RFP or the request for proposal, as well as have someone that can help us evaluate candidates when they come back or once we get responses. I know a lot of organizations do this just because they're not exactly subject matter experts in the accounting system. So I'm looking to do this, but I'm also not ruling out just doing it on my own if necessary. If I feel like if I feel confident enough in evaluating vendors myself and doing the procurement myself. But I think the more likely route is to hire a consultant, assuming it's within the price range that we have funding for. So.
Thank you.
Can I
Okay.
ask a question? Matt, you mentioned about the electric bus charging infrastructure, and you just said haven't decided how much you use. Does that mean there may be not enough? Does that mean there may be leftover funds? And if there are leftover funds, can they be moved to somewhere else? And is this infrastructure funds all that we need to set this up, or is this going to be a reoccurring cost? Because I know that we got the additional money to get more buses, electric buses.
So I believe you're referring to this line here.
Yes.
It is a bit under what we have here. We requested 1.9 million, we got 1.88. So it's a shortfall of a little under $50,000. But what I will note is that the amount that was carried over from the fire suppression system was the full grant award for the fire suppression system, which was significantly, the actual construction cost came in significantly under budget. So I think we should be able to work with V-Trans to right size this number up here, even if that means reducing this amount. But this is not going to be a recurring cost. This is just capital costs here. There are some recurring costs for the operation of those charging systems, but we're pretty well covered for a few years until those would need to start hitting the operating budget. And what I'm referring to are like annual fees for Mobility House, which is the charge management software for our chargers to ensure that buses are not charging during peak hours. And then also when the chargers themselves come off warranty, we'll have to allocate some money for servicing there.
So thank you very much. So basically you're going to be able to find the difference necessary, and this is sufficient to create a functional operating charging system for our fleet as it grows.
Exactly. This will get the number of chargers needed to bring these additional 6 up here online.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Matt, can you do the rural side in like 6 minutes? Just because we got to do an executive session. Sorry to cut you short.
It's all good. So rural, I won't spend a lot of time repeating myself. Rural was primarily, the shortages in rural is primarily vehicles, which are going to be captured in the 5339 application. So we're hopeful that we'll get that influx of vehicle capital and that this will change. Our non-vehicle capital is actually pretty well funded on the rural side, and we may need to have some internal discussions based on where urban capital stands on whether this is the best investment of the limited capital funds that we have at this time in the organization. But there were several facility improvement items. And I won't really even say improvement. This is really getting the facility in Berlin to a state of good repair. So that's why we see a higher number here than we've had in the past. But I will note we didn't get an award for spare parts. So we may need to consider carving this off and funding some other projects here. 40,000 for the Central Vermont facility planning. We do view this as an ongoing activity in FY26, even with the transfer planning occurring during that year. Facility passenger amenity improvements. I think we'll need to have some internal discussion given the lack of funding on the urban side to match our direct federal grant for shelters, whether $45,000 investment in a rural shelter is a better prioritization than using the same amount of money for our urban shelters. We have our carry forward vehicles from FY25. This will be an ongoing discussion as we have been moving in the LPG direction, but obviously we do not want to saddle the transfer agencies with vehicles that they do not want. So we're going to continue to work with them on ensuring that we can get buses ordered here and that they are of the appropriate type given the current landscape. And down here below are some items that were not in our FY26 capital budget. V-Trans has an older Lono grant that's really specific to GMT, and the only option really is just for us to buy these vehicles. So we have funding for 2 electric Ford E-Transit vans, as well as the associated infrastructure. And then we have money in here to cover the ongoing route match costs. These tend to pop up about midway through the year. So we're kind of getting ahead of the ball, or ahead of the game, in FY 26, with having funding to start, for those lines. All right, any questions on rural?
Thank you, Matt.
Hope I gave you enough time there, Nick.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. All right.
So next item on the agenda is an executive session to discuss labor relations. So we'll need I don't know if we need a finding for this or just a motion. Need a
We-
finding?
We will need a finding that premature public knowledge of our labor negotiations would put GMT at a substantial disadvantage. So we'll need somebody to make that finding in a motion.
Would somebody make that motion, please?
Like that motion.
Thank you, Austin. Is there a
I
second?
second it.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion carries. Now we need a motion to go into executive session.
And I would say that motion would include that I and Nick and I would be staying on.
I
think
move we
the-
enter.
Sorry, Dan has his hand up.
I'm sorry, Dan.
Yeah, sorry, just a question. Is it at all possible for V-Trans to listen in? Just because of the rural transfer that's going on? Is it the right time to listen or be notified of anything? So I'm just asking.
This is gonna be to discuss the urban negotiations and what and so I mean, I don't have a problem with V-Trans, hearing about our deliberations for how we're approaching the urban negotiations. So I'll leave that to the board members if to expand our executive session or not.
Do we want to add Dan to participants in our executive session? Austin, Mike?
I don't know. I don't feel like I know enough, but my inclination would just be if there's anything that comes out of this executive session, V-Trans is in consistent communication with GMT staff and they could probably get it that way. But I don't know enough on this.
I mean,
I just don't
Dan,
think I don't think we've traditionally brought V-Trans into executive sessions. I can't think of one where we've done that.
We did bring them in January when we gave the overview of what the bargaining situation would be like.
It is, but we're not yet.
Mhm.
We're
Oh,
still in process, are we not?
Yes.
I mean, I think as
So maybe,
GMT's sorry, Michael, go ahead.
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I would say, V-Trans is, they're one of our largest funders, so they bear some, this contract is gonna impact them, especially, so I think it's in our benefit to have you part of this conversation.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I defer to staff on this because, like I said, I've not really experienced many.
And we know Dan is sworn to secrecy.
Always.
Well, it's a bit of a quandary, but I would say since we haven't heard any extreme reasons why Dan shouldn't be included, why don't we go ahead and include Dan in this executive session? Is that
Okay.
okay?
Yes.
Committee members?
And so we would need, I don't think anybody made a motion yet to go into the executive session with the three of us.
So I move that we go into the executive session and include in that the general manager, the finance officer for Green Mountain Transit, and Dan from V-Trans.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of going into executive session, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We're now in executive session.
And
Let me
yep.
shut the-
And recording.
Yeah. Is this no, that's the end meeting. I don't wanna do that. Sorry, folks. Where do you
There should be a little like pause button. down
pause.
below.
Yeah, I just found it. Okay.
And
Pause.
it's
You can only take action in executive session on real estate matters.
Let's buy some real estate. I think that a nice camp in the Northeast Kingdom on Lake Willoughby is just what GMT needs.
We could get away from it all.
Mhm.
Is there any other business to come before the committee? Then a motion will be in order to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Austin.
Seconded.
Thank you, Michael. All those in favor of exiting the meeting, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Aye.
Thank you.
everyone.
Appreciate
Thank you
this.
all.